While we're on it, House of the
Might as
Dragon.
well.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Episode 9 is
Yeah.
not actually the follow-up to the finale as I originally would have thought it would be. It is we have one left after this in the season.
Yes.
And I'm gonna preface this by saying that I went into this episode a little weary because try as I might, murmurings, made their way through vines
Yeah.
to me about some of the things of this episode. Just
Oh, this
namely
episode,
that,
okay.
yeah, just namely that it was disappointing. When
Mhm.
on a season wide thing, it was disappointing.
Sure.
Someone even suggesting it seemed like the ending didn't belong in the show or whatever. And that, or like it felt like it wasn't part of the same show or made by the same people or something like that. And then that there was a
Okay.
really disturbing foot scene. Um, and so I have to say, after watching it, I find those faults and
False.
complaints
Okay.
falling on deaf ears.
Okay. Okay. So you liked this episode.
I did. Yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
just didn't, or was it that the complaints didn't bother you?
No,
You know what I
it
mean?
was
I feel
that
like there's a
well,
difference.
the reason I'm adding this little asterisk here is because maybe if I hadn't heard any of these things, my expectations would have been higher and my
And then they would have
judgment would have
fallen.
been right, would have been more
Sure. Sure.
severe.
Sure. Sure. I get you.
Maybe. But with what I had in mind, like going in like, oh, maybe this is gonna be the weaker episode of the season, I was like, I don't think so at all. I very much enjoyed this episode, and I thought it's to the strength of the line of characters we have when we could have
Sure.
a whole episode without Damon or Rhaenyra at all,
Yeah.
and then we've lost Viserys, so like people not involved here and still enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Almost no Targaryen bloodline involved.
Right.
Almost. No direct Targaryen. Well, no, that's not true.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not true.
direct. Yeah, it's the kids. The kids. And
Right, yeah,
then
I was gonna say, and Rhaenys.
Rhaenys. Yeah.
I
We're
momentarily,
gonna
like,
rewind a bit again.
yeah, I momentarily lumped her in because Velaryon, and then I was like, "No, no, no,
Yeah.
she's a Targaryen by blood," even though she, obviously married outside.
Yep.
I mean, outside quotes.
Yeah. One of the few,
Um,
I suppose, of the Targaryens, it
right,
seems.
right.
But
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give my overall impressions, and then we can, like, deep dive into it. I didn't I also heard some rumblings about this episode, and I have to say I don't think this was a weak episode. I think there's another episode in the season that probably earns that title for me,
yes.
but this was probably one of the most, if you know how I've been watching the season and how frustrated I've been with the entire Hightower clan slash Kristen Cole, this was probably the most frustrating episode for me to get through just because, like, at literally every turn, I was like, oh my God, this is so stupid. Like, you can't actually believe this. Oh my God, you're having a realization. It's way too late, you idiot. Or like somebody was doing something to just absolutely effing piss me off. So, like, the whole episode was just, like, enraging to watch people talk themselves into their, like, delusions of,
Mm.
like, what they wanna believe and how hard they had to hide from the truth to make that happen. Like, the mental gymnastics and, like, the circles that people had to talk themselves into to, like,
Yeah.
make things fit their own desired narrative was just astonishing and astonishingly stupid. So, of course, like,
Mhm.
as a viewer, I was just sitting there being like, "Ugh, ugh, ugh." Like, so
I can see you sitting there on the couch just, ah, I can totally
seriously.
see that.
I mean, if you just look at my show notes, it's basically like a mind dump of like there's like all of me being like, "Oh my god." So, yeah. I mean, I have like 60,000 times the show notes you have. You have 2 show notes.
Yeah,
But I
I
don't
know. I
I mean, I think only half of that was born out of frustration, and some of that was just, like, things were actually happening that I was like, "Wow, interesting." So,
okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, yeah, I think I mean, agree in the sense that the weaker episode was earlier in the season. I think it
yeah,
was the first one where we had the cast change, right? I think that was the
yeah,
one, and then we had the older kids, and then it's like this seemed like it. Yeah, I think that one was
struggled,
the
yeah.
gross one. Yeah. Um. Yeah, I understand what you're saying with frustration by some of these things. I guess I'm used to what these characters are, so it's not unexpected. Um, I I was interested to see how what's his name now? The new king. Um, is
Aegon?
it Aegon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first son, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was interested to see how this was gonna, because obviously a lot of the episode was spent looking for him and
Right.
how desperately he wants to not have this.
Yeah,
So I thought it was really interesting to see this progression of how he was kind of warmed to the idea and then embraced it all quite quickly.
yeah,
And I do think it makes sense. It's one of the things where you're seeing those around you and you're like, I don't want this responsibility. I don't want anything to do with all this. Just leave me alone.
right,
No one no one seems to listen or care about me anyways or whatever. So it
right.
just kind of further puts you into this sort of I want nothing to do with you. But then, you know, I mean, and he starts the moment. It's one of my favorite moments. He's sitting there with his mom in the carriage, and he's like, "What are you talking about?
Oh,
Dad didn't even like me. He didn't want
yes.
anything to, of course." And then she shows him a dagger,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Are you serious? Really?" Like,
Oh,
he
oh,
start,
ugh. Ugh, I'm sorry. It's just like it's so much. Like I have in the show notes, I'm like, even Aegon is like, are you all seriously believing that like
yes,
Viserys had an 11th hour change of heart and was like, Aegon should be heir? Like even he realizes how stupid that sounds.
yep,
Like, and he's not
mhm,
afraid to be like, this is bullshit. Like he hated me, which I don't think he did, but he definitely was uninterested.
right,
I mean,
right,
I think we clearly saw that.
yep,
He liked him as a little kid, and then he grew up and was like a spoiled little brat, and Viserys was basically like, "I don't care. I got my own problems." And then,
yep,
yeah, Alicent shows him the dagger, which basically proves nothing other than she stole it, and
right,
he's like, "Oh, interesting." Oh, and then says like, "Oh, you're my son." When last episode she was like, "You're no son of mine." I'm like,
right,
"Oh my god." So, yeah,
yeah,
just, like, showing off for me Alicent's just, like, absolute inability to commit to anything and just, like, change herself around, whatever. Um, but yeah, for Aegon, I think that is a very powerful motivator. He feels neglected by his parents, and now suddenly, Alicent's showing him attention, showing him this, like, potential post-mortem gift that Viserys is
hmm,
giving him, and that goes to his head, and I think it would for any kid that seems to finally be accepted or loved, no matter how much deep down, if he was a more brave and honest person, he would probably realize this is pretty fake. But
yep,
sometimes people just like need that surface acceptance and love,
yep,
and he
yeah.
does.
And it's setting up for him to be one of the, you know, well, not a great leader probably, because you'd see him at the end, that he is not used to this sort of any sort of attention, and that's a positive one. So when you have
Right.
a room, packed to the gills with people cheering for you that you sort of have command of, it's what an intoxicating thing all of a sudden. for someone
Absolutely.
that's gone from zero love to seeking, love in any sort of substance and in
Right.
whorehouses and stuff like that to like, wow, like you
Right.
say, recognition from my mother. Maybe my father actually did do this. That's crazy. I don't know why he wouldn't say anything. And then like, wow, everybody is cheering for me. That's nuts. So yeah, you can see him. I liked that path, and I thought it actually made
Yeah.
sense for how he could be accepting of this role now.
Yeah. I completely agree. I've not I mean, accepting his time as, a baby slash 2-year-old child. I've not liked Aegon from the beginning. From when he could
Right.
actually show us a personality and a character, I've always thought he was like a little shit and was either already or on his way to becoming like another Joffrey Baratheon. And still think he's on, pieces of that path for sure, where being a ruler for him is more about showboating and the recognition and glory and faux love that he gets rather than any sort of responsibility. But I thought that his character journey was very true to his character. I felt
Yep.
that everything in this episode was very appropriate for him, from running and
Mhm.
hiding because he doesn't want the responsibility because that's in the moment all he's thinking about. He's not thinking about like the fun side of it. Totally, totally got that. Um, you know, the fact that he had to be like dragged back to the castle by, his I mean, well, first like his guard and then, secondly after Kristen gets him by Kristen fit very well. And then like the way that he was like, I don't want this, dad didn't want this for me. I know who these people are. I know how you feel about me, to switching to like, I'm just going to go along with it cuz this seems pretty great. Everything fit for him.
Yep. And I like you mentioned that there is a sort of Joffrey element and that he's a spoiled
Yeah.
kid, but it's not a Joffrey clone because Joffrey wanted this
Yes,
always,
yes.
and he was
Absolutely. And that's
cruel
the difference.
always. And so yeah, you
Well,
get
I mean, I think Aegon's been cruel in different ways always. Because one of the first times we see him, he's just like spouting horrible nonsense at his mom, and then also at Aemond. He's like one of the bullies that
mm,
sets Aemond up with the pig as his
mm,
dragon. Um, and then of course, like we move on to like he's a drunk and he's useless. Then we move on to like he's forcing serving girls in his bedroom and he's like raping them. Now
I
in
don't
this
remember I don't
episode,
remember that.
oh yeah, last
Is
episode, like the very beginning where Allison pays off that serving girl, um, that I talked about, like how she's,
Oh,
yeah.
well, I didn't know
So,
that was a forced thing. I guess I
uh,
didn't recognize
I
that,
read
but
I read it her as like her with how scared she was. I'm pretty sure that was like a forced
interesting. See, I read it
sexual
as she's
encounter.
afraid of the queen because she understands that she's been caught with her son and like what are you
But
going to
she wasn't
do
caught
to my
though, because she was the one who found his personal guard and told him what happened. So if she had been caught,
mm,
I think that's a completely different scenario, you're right. But she was the one who,
okay.
like, told Eric what Aegon did to her, and then Eric brought her to the queen.
Okay. It's funny they give her that drink, and then in this episode, they are like,
Oh my god,
"Yeah, he's probably
Aegon
got
has
a ton of
bastards.
bastards all over."
Yeah. I mean, which clearly Alicent doesn't know about.
Right.
Um, but
Yeah.
then, yeah, again, in this episode, they, like, further the depths of his Aegon's cruelty in that he not only goes around like fathering bastards and doesn't do anything about it, but then also goes and watches them in these child fighting rings. Like
Right.
he has to know they're his. Like
That's
who
true.
else's are they? Like
Yeah.
he's the one fathering these kids and then yeah, goes to the child fighting ring, sees these like silver-haired little kids in the ring and is just like whatever.
Yep.
So I think he's got his own cruelties, but you are definitely right in the fact that, like, he is not 100% Joffrey Baratheon.
Yep.
It's not an exact replica, I just think he's, like, a different version.
Yep. And then yeah, the like power to, mold your own mind and convince yourself of something that you know is not true, that we see with Alicent. It is impressive because I feel like she has managed to
The
convince herself
gymnastics.
that this is
The
really what
gymnastics.
was is wanted here. And
Ugh.
right, how she switched on a dime from "You're worthless, get out of here. What you mean nothing to me" to "Oh, my dear son, my dear boy," like yeah, it's
Oh
something.
god. It just yeah, if she would stop and think about, like, when Viserys, like, is gasping out what to her is his nonsensical, last words, and she just, like, forces them to fit a narrative. Like, in the moment of the conversation, she's clearly confused. Obviously, afterwards, she, like, thinks she's put it together or whatever. But in that moment of confusion when Viserys actually utters the words, "The prince that was promised," like, if she stopped for half a second to really think about those words and, like, "Do they apply to my son Aegon?" I mean, I feel like anybody who knows Aegon knows the answer is a resounding no.
Yep, yep.
Like,
The
he just doesn't
Yes.
fit any sort of, like, glorious title.
No. I think what sold this episode for me and was my favorite part was the tension we had at the beginning, just not knowing how this is going to fall. Because I really
Yeah,
didn't know what to expect and how this was going to transpire. And I didn't see the split amongst the family, amongst Alicent and Otto in the competition for we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it this way. Same
yeah,
ultimate goal, but different means. And so I found that really interesting at the council meeting that they're first discussing this. And I felt the tension. I felt it just like the leader of the White Cloaks, who's been a
oh,
spectacular character
yes.
the whole time, Graham McTavish, and you could see the discomfort on his face. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not doing this if you asked me to do this. Like, are we really doing this right now? You just killed a member of the high of the council. Like,
right.
all this stuff is
Ugh,
just freaking him
Kristen.
out. And he is like one of the only like resolute, you know, touch keystone characters here that's has feels like they stand for what they say, they have a
Right,
moral backbone and
right.
have some semblance of honor. And Alance's name is Sir Harold Westerling, which is a
Yes.
good name.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think that his moment of standing up is all the more impressive for, and not that he's, like, a coward or anything, but I just think it's more impressive for just, like, literally watching Lord Beesbury, who,
Yeah.
just did the same thing, and I didn't expect it of him. He really had the mettle to just call everybody out and be like, "This is some betrayal, treason bullshit going on up
Yep.
in here." Um And he just, like, called everybody out, and then Kristen just killed him, and then still, it's hard to think of him as Sir Harold Westerling. I keep wanting to just say it, like you said, Graham McTavish.
Mhm.
Um, just stands up as like, "No, even still, I just watched you murder him. Maybe Kristen will come after me. Or no, I don't know how to read the tenor of this room, but still, this ain't right, and I'm not having it."
Yep.
Um so yeah, I did enjoy that there were at least people complicating the situation. And I did enjoy, like you said, the fracture between Alicent and Otto. Where, Alicent, even though I'm always like, God, you're so slow realizing what your father is capable of. Like, she always just comes to this, like, oh my God, he really does do this. Like, in the last episode where she had the, like, realization of, like, man, my father really manipulated me into this marriage that I didn't want. And now she's like, man, my father just set up this whole, like, contingency plan of betrayal and treason and made me believe that Rhaenyra was out to kill me and my family when he's been plotting her murder the whole time. Like, so slow, but you got there, girl, I guess. Um, but yeah, just like her realization of, like, even though I don't like his means and I'm going to stand up against his means, I like the end of it where my family gets to be, you know, ruling and
Right.
sitting the Iron Throne, and I get my piece of the power by whispering in Aegon's ear if I can find him first. You
Yep.
know, and that's really, like, setting up the whole race between Alicent and Otto, who finds Aegon, who gets to whisper.
Yep.
Which Renice, since she's on our screens, for those of you watching, really just accurately calls Alicent out on, just, like, absolutely dresses her up and down with her little speech about, like, "All you're doing is looking to make a window out of your prison wall, you're not actually looking to escape," and was just,
Right.
oof, the most scathing burn.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say is I don't know that Allison really did get there on her own. It kind of did come down to Renice like giving her that little speech
Oh,
to help her get
yeah.
there, you know?
Sorry, I didn't mean she, like, fully got there on her own, but when she is sitting in that, like, first small council scene and she's just sort of
Yeah.
realizing how many men around the table have planned for this day and, like, have things ready to go, she's just sort of like, the wheels are turning. And then, yes, I
Mhm.
think Renice helps her, like, make that final leap. But,
Yep.
yeah, just watching her, like, figure all of that out, I think it's a good, you know, ploy as far as, like, direction goes, like, for the audience, just, like, catching up to all of this. We're kind of seeing it through Allison's eyes, who's, like, seeing it for the first time. So it's a
Right.
good, like, in,
Yep.
but yeah, it's frustrating
And then
also
it's
as a viewer to be like, "Allison, God, get there."
well, and then it was strengthened as well with her conversation with her father, which I did like the two of
Yes.
them. And neither of them really give any ground, but like she's like she does put that forward. Like you've put all these things in place for me and sort of enough with it. This is what's happening. So I liked that. And I also liked that despite what she's, like you say, that she's come to this realization that she's put in place here to be in this marriage she didn't want and all this stuff. She seems in this episode to really care though. It still came out like she cries over
Viserys?
Viserys's body
Yeah. Mhm.
and I do think that she's still and that's why like a lot of this is all a little um it, it's sad because she has a lot. She has she had a husband that actually cared for her that and is in a position of royalty, so she gets to be royalty. She doesn't have to live in the gutters with everybody else. She
Right.
has many
She could have had a
children.
husband that who was cruel too, like, let's
Right,
not forget her, like, little speech with Rhaenyra where she's like, "At least you get to pick your husband." But, I mean, yeah, her husband got picked for her, but at least he's not, like, a total, like, torturer or, like, somebody who, like, would beat her or just, like,
right.
completely ignore her and shut her away. Like,
Mhm.
Viserys, kind of grows uninterested over the years, but starts out really caring for her.
Yeah. Yeah, they sort of grow apart and they don't pay enough attention to their children, all this stuff, but
Right.
um yeah. So but so I liked those moments. Gives her more, humanity and
Yeah. Yeah, the
yeah.
the time that I thought, her kind of complicated characterization was at its best was, the moment that she's with Viserys's body, and she truly seems sad, and it did make me empathize with her as a character because I think there was love there, and I think she's sad that he was a good man, and it's not his fault that she felt trapped in their marriage.
Mhm.
Um, so she's sort of, remembering, like, the good things and remembering him as overall a good man, and she's genuinely sorry that he died. But also there, like, it conflicts with how frustrated I get with her evolution as a character because the way that, like, Viserys is wrapped up and he's about to have a funeral in the tradition of the 7, the newer gods, rather than, like, being burned as a Targaryen is just like, that is not what Viserys would want, like,
Right.
ugh. Like, think about your husband, don't think about, like, your newfound, like, religion, you know? So yeah, so
Yep.
it's like a little bit frustrating. There's like that tension of character where she's sorry, but also she can't like get over herself in some
Yep.
ways.
Yep. Well, let's make a shift here and talk about Laris Strong and the foot scene.
Gross. It's gross.
Hey, no kink shaming, Andrea.
I
Oh, we
just
doing
did
this
it.
podcast?
I just did it. um,
um,
yeah. Obviously, you said right off the bat that you were hearing some things about that and had some strong reactions to the foot scene.
I had heard that it was like just so disgusting and it went on so long. And so I was waiting for like this to really escalate. I
Yeah,
thought
sure.
he'd be sucking on those toes and all kinds of stuff. And so to me it's like, well, that wasn't that long. It was pretty tame.
No,
Um, but what was more interesting to me really was the content of the discussion yet. And I was a
sure.
little confused because was he suggesting that her daughter is involved in this ring of spies or
Uh, no, I don't believe
or is like
so.
a pawn of this, like people are using her for it
No,
or what? Because she was brought up, was she not? Like, or
yes,
did I
yeah.
miss something?
I felt that they were talking. Um, I mean, they were obviously talking about Allison's maid, Talia, who was reporting here. On screen we see Missaria. So that was, kind of like the head of the snake that they were talking about. But I believe they were also referring to I thought that they were referring to Aegon and Helena's like children's nanny. That's what I thought. That's where I thought her daughter came
Hmm.
into it.
Okay.
Not that Helena had anything to actually do with it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just a little confused there.
Yeah,
What
their
is
their
exactly
conversation was a
being
little
said?
yeah, their conversation was a little abstract, and I think it was supposed to be that way because Laris is really drawing this out because this is like his moment of like, I'm forcing you to do the thing. I really want
Right.
to be the heat. I really want to like draw it out as much as possible.
Hmm.
Like they've obviously done this dance a lot. And
Right.
so he knows how to like prolong to keep getting what he wants, which is not just like, here's her feet. It's just like, here's my bare feet. Here and now are like my feet in your view so you can jack off to them. Again, not things I say on this podcast that I just like I'm like, any other context in my life, the sentence would just be what? Um, and yet here I've said it.
We just have
Um,
a new follower on Twitch at this very moment, and they're probably gone now. It's a unfollow. It's just
sorry, sorry. Thank you for being here.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that was him drawing out the conversation because of course he wants this moment as long as he can because
Okay.
he knows Allison is reluctant but going to give in as long as he keeps like tit- titillating her with information as she titillates
Yep.
him with her feet. Again, gross. Can't believe I'm saying this, but that's where I am.
Hey, it's
This is what the
you
writers have
know,
made me do.
it's not very
I hope you're happy, writers,
it's not difficult, she gets to look away, she gets to stay like 6 feet away.
right?
It's
She just has to show 'em her bare feet. I mean,
this is a
obviously, like,
win-win. This
I
is a
yeah,
win-win.
well, I mean, it's like a win-win-ish. 'Cause I mean, yeah,
Well, anytime
she's her face obviously says, like, "I hate this," as
right.
as she
Well,
should.
yeah,
I mean, like, she doesn't want any part of this, and it's obviously she feels like it's debasing, which it is. But I mean, if she really didn't want this information, like,
mhm.
don't give it up like that.
She should have been, commissioning the royal, um, artist to draw many
Oh my
versions
god,
of her
that's
feet.
that's a That's a clever
and
workaround. Wow.
and
Didn't even think
sell
of that.
them to him for
Information,
some
yeah.
Bitcoin and information, yeah, mhm.
Oof, yeah, I didn't think about that. I wonder how long you'd be satisfied by that, though, because they've
I know.
clearly, like, escalated, you know what I mean? Like, it obviously
Yeah.
didn't start out as her just, like, propping up her bare feet for him to, like, pleasure
It would
himself
get
to.
to it
That's
would get
that's
to
obviously
the
not the first
artist.
time.
Yeah, right, right. It would get to the artist drawing him in portrait with the feet,
Sure.
so he could, like, really, like, they can get really creative, and
But then you have to, like, let somebody else in on
I
that, you know
know,
what I mean?
I know,
'Cause
that
it
is the
lit
thing, but
you'd have to, like, bring somebody in and trust that they wouldn't, tell. Because
I
obviously
know,
she's not gonna tell, and Laris is like, "I really like this arrangement, so as long as it works for me, I won't tell anybody." But how
but
do you trust
right.
somebody else then
But
too?
Laris is so connected, I feel like that's what they're setting up is that he is very, so who's gonna get away with betraying this deal because he'll know
Somebody,
about it,
yeah. Yeah.
you know?
But
So,
somebody is going to. I mean, this clearly
yeah.
doesn't, like, go on forever. Like, there's gonna be a point where, either Laris or Allison finds it beneficial to, you know I mean, for Laris, he might, like, expose this to Otto or use it in some way to, like, curry favor with Otto, or Allison is going to feel she has, like, a replacement for Laris and betray him somehow.
They That was interesting. We did see Laris
Yeah.
kind of start a relationship with Otto. They had their
Yes.
brief little discussion where Otto is not unaware that he's spent a lot of time with his daughter, and he's just like, "Yeah, that could be beneficial to you as well."
Yep. Yep.
We don't know what that
So
means yet.
yeah, I mean, obvious like you say, we don't know what that means yet. For me, I at least took it as, like, a slippery slope or a hint that there at some point where Laris could absolutely betray Allison's trust, um,
Right. Yeah.
and, sell her out to Otto in some fashion, including, her depravity, really his depravity, but obviously Otto would take it poorly about Allison. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, for Allison, there's always a risk of, somebody's gonna catch them and she's the queen and this is highly improper, especially for a woman. Anything near sexual that, a woman could be caught with is obviously gonna be worse for the woman. So,
I think she should just embrace it, just, "Hey, y'all, I have beautiful feet. What are
she
you gonna
can't though.
what can you do? What can you do? I have
Can't
beautiful
though,
feet."
because she's built up this whole, like, I'm a pious, chaste, virtuous queen image.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? Rhaenyra could get away with this,
that's true. Yeah, I
because
suppose maybe
everybody's
that's
just sort
yeah,
of like, she already has a scandalous reputation. Like, we kinda talk about it, but we're also kind of afraid of her, so, like, whatever. I mean, it would be weird, but it would be a lot easier to, like, accept for Rhaenyra, whereas, like, Alicent is, like, paragon, chastity, virtue, like, can't do any of this
sure,
stuff. So,
sure.
yeah.
All right. We also now we should talk about. We mentioned her, but should get into a little more Renice because she was.
Yes.
This was definitely her biggest moment in this episode or in this season thus far for her
She is
character.
a
She had more screen
boss.
time.
Yes, she is a boss bitch in this episode for, like, being someone who you initially think is, like, a prisoner and, gonna be, like, a victim or a casualty of this Green Council. She has two of the absolute just biggest cut downs of this episode, and I loved it. Good
Yeah, we
for
talked
her.
about the one already. Really, giving Allison a piece of her mind, and
Oof.
then she gets broken out, and that
Yes,
looks like it's
by the better
gonna
twin.
go badly all of a sudden. Um, and then we see her smile, and I didn't know what that was about. And so she had an idea, and obviously we get our episode capping off with her busting in.
Oh,
No regard for human life, I
nope,
might add.
nope.
So,
Holy
you
cow.
know,
I mean,
Targaryen through and through,
did
but
you see that coming? Because,
no.
her dragon, Meleys, erupted out of the ground, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like, viscerally just hit with that. Was not expecting it at all.
As soon as the
So
dragon was there, though, I figured it was her.
oh, I did
Like, you know,
too.
they hide the rider
Yeah.
for a while. I'm like, I bet it's her. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, especially because earlier when, Eric is trying to escort her to safety and she's like, "My dragon," and he's like, "Sorry." But the second
Mm.
yeah, like you said, that her dragon erupted out of the ground, I was like, "There she is!" Just making an entrance. Woo, the
So,
destruction. I was shocked. That is, like, the way to interrupt that ceremony, which is going perfectly for Aegon right up until that moment.
yeah.
And nobody's gonna remember a GD thing about the actual ceremony other than, "Holy shit, we were all terrified by the dragon that just
Yep.
burst in."
Hmm. I
I
like
mean
how they have to, they can't be like, hey, announcement, king being crowned. It's just like herd everyone that's available
right? It's like
in.
forced
Just going.
march to
You're
yeah,
going as witness, like that's what it is.
yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's cool. Like, so w- two things. Should she have torched them all?
Yes.
And two, why did she not? Or what's being said here?
Yeah, my only thought here is she's suffered so much death and pain and loss, and Alicent stepping in front of Aegon was just like, "I can't take her child the way mine have all been taken unjustly from me." You know what I mean? Like, this she's
Sure.
for as much as she, like, hates the Hightowers and, like, thinks that it's wrong that they're on the throne right now and that Aegon was crowned because obviously Rhaenyra is supposed to be queen, um, she just isn't the person to pull the trigger, you know?
Right.
From her own losses and her own recent experience, I just think she's like, "You know what? It doesn't matter if I torch them all here because I think Rhaenyra is gonna win anyway, so, like, she'll do the dirty deed."
Mm,
That's the only thing that's sort of, like, going through my mind is, like, she doesn't wanna be the one to cause that loss for somebody else, even though obviously she would torch Alicent in the process, but she just doesn't wanna do it because she thinks Rhaenyra will win and do it for her.
mm.
But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
I absolutely was, like, ready for her to just, like, unleash
Light
a
him up.
fireball. Yeah, light him up. Light him up, baby. 4th of July. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
I
mean, that
know
would have
obviously
really
I kn
been that would have been like black, like red wedding scale. I
right?
mean, just
Right?
wow. You
I
just
mean, it really would have blown my mind because I obviously, like, sat there watching, her dragon threaten them all and be like, "Obviously, they're not gonna do it because then the war's over." But, um, yeah, it would have been
but it
shocking
wouldn't
and
have to
would have
be.
been so satisfying.
We could have seen who the real Targaryens were. Eye
Mhm.
Patch Kid could have been like
Aemond could have lived.
invulnerable to fire. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's true,
he's the one. He's got the biggest dragon. And
right?
so
Yeah.
that would have been interesting. Yeah, I don't know what to think of why she didn't. Like you say, probably I'm not going to take someone else's children. And she thought she can scare them enough, like, and have this over them. I
Right.
could have burnt you all right there.
Right.
I chose to not leave me and Driftmark alone,
Right.
kind of thing. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, in the post episode, explainer, we get a lot of like, well, she just like really also wants to go tell Rhaenyra what happened. I'm like, Doesn't matter if she flew off 5 or 10 seconds later after she burned them all to a crisp. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I thought that was kind of like a lame explainer of, like, Rhaenyra needs to know. And Rhaenyra needs her enemies also dead, so
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I actually didn't see the post-credit thing on this one, so I didn't
Oh,
know if
okay.
there was what else there was in there, but yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No,
Um,
no.
was that the actress or was that the showrunner or writer?
Showrunner. Showrunner. That was not her.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what I again, I've never had this issue with a show before where so many conflicting problems with the post-credit
Yeah, yeah. I
things.
feel like the
That's
post credits
very
have really been,
weird.
like, up and down, where some
Yeah.
of them are like, provide much needed explanations for things where you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, I wish you would have put that in the actual episode. It really would
Yeah.
have helped me." And then sometimes I'm like, "Oh, no, I hate your explanation of that motivation.
Yep.
That's terrible. That's not what I read in the scene at
Yep.
all." So,
Yep.
yeah.
Well, art is in the eye of the beholder. That's why
Right,
sometimes it is
right. Art
best
is
that they shut
subjective.
up
Yes.
because, yeah, you can
Well, and I do tend to like hearing more from the actors and actresses, just talking about their character motivations because that often gives me a different perspective on things where it's not so like showrunners are often trying to say like we did this way because we wanted to make this black and white point. You know what I
mm,
mean? Whereas, like, the actors are usually like, "I see Rhaenyra doing this because I felt blah," or like, when she makes this choice, I was really trying to convey these conflicting emotions and things that, happened in the previous episode that are coming to bear on this decision. And I find that to be more interpretive, and I like those considerations rather than like the showrunners being like, "We did this way."
mm. They are achieving two very different things by commenting because if
Right.
you're a writer or showrunner, it's sort of like it should be setting sort of the way it is, kind of clarification of
Right.
what we have in the world or what you're seeing or how something was done. When you listen to an actor or something like that, then it feels more like you're getting how an actor got there, like why
Yes.
what they're so that's not giving clarification really to a character or the world necessarily, but how they saw it and how that bore fruit to what was put on screen. So
Yeah, yeah, and I do like that kind of non-clarification. I like this is how I interpreted it because it just gives me more to consider about
sure.
motivation or considering like the complexity of a character rather than seeing them too black and white. I mean, I do have strong opinions about some of the characters in this show and I just don't know that like adding any other layers of complexity to Alicent or Otto or Aegon's is ever gonna make me, like, think, like, "Ooh, I really am just enjoying this
Sure.
character," but it does help.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I didn't see the preview for the next one. I didn't see that. I don't know what happened. It didn't play after the episode, so I was
Oh,
like, "Oh, I
okay.
guess there isn't one." But
Yeah,
whatever
I
happened
mean,
there.
I've seen the preview, where I wrote here preview of Dragon Devastation, I was really talking about, Meleys coming in and just, like, you know, pounding through and devastating that coronation, both the building and the people.
Mm,
It's just really kind of giving us, like, as the audience, not only just absolutely taking this moment from the high towers,
yeah,
but also previewing what a war with people with dragons is going to look like the absolute
right,
havoc and devastation that a dragon can wreak. This is just a small taste of what's going to be happening when
right.
there's like multiple dragons coming to bear.
Yes.
So, it is kind of just an impressive foreshadowing of, like, this is what one dragon can do. Imagine, 10 dragons, 20
Mhm.
dragons, however many dragons on each side could do.
One last thing that I need an answer to, and then I think
Okay,
I've said what I need to say anyways.
okay.
What was with the one twin abandoning his brother?
Yeah! Yeah! I loved
What
it.
the heck?
I loved it.
What but I don't understand. Why
Okay,
why?
so so it was born out of when they were going to look, they were sent by Otto to look for Aegon, and the one twin was like, Eric E, was questioning his brother Auric. I believe that's the pronunciation to differentiate the names. Um, was like, "Why do we wanna go find Aegon? We've been guarding him for years. We've seen what a little shit he is." Like,
Mhm.
not only like the drinking, the cheating on his wife, and like, he doesn't care anything. He's never studied, he's never taken responsibility, like he doesn't want a king. And then also cherry on top, like he is cruel in that he watches these child fights in which his own bastard children participate and does nothing about it. Like
Mhm.
he is complete shit from top to bottom. Why are we finding him? And Arik's like, duty. And
Right.
Eric's like, yeah, but is that enough to just like blindly put this little turd on the throne? And his brother's like, yep. And he's like, no, I don't think so. So yeah, so that was like the whole motivation. They find Aegon, Arik is gonna bring him back, and Eric's like, no, no, I don't need to be part of this. I don't want to be part of this. Like Otto has the wrong ideas. I don't even want Aegon to be king. So just gonna bounce, let Kristen take Aegon because maybe Alicent can soften him up a little bit and be, the lesser of two evils because he's obviously getting on the throne now that he's been found. And I'm gonna go free Rhaenys because I'm gonna join their cause.
Hmm. That makes sense. I get what you're
I mean, it's a
what
it's
you're
a
saying
lot
with
to
that.
get to. It's a
Yeah.
lot to get to in very short scenes.
I guess it just surprised me that he was gonna, I understood the disagreement. That makes sense. I was surprised he was gonna let his brother potentially be murdered by Kristen Cole. Like that's obviously he didn't. That's not what happened.
Right,
But
right.
just the way we've seen Cole, and even in this episode,
You never know,
I was
man.
like, this could be a battle to the death right now. Like they're
Yeah,
gonna, and so you're gonna leave your brother to die for, like even if you disagree. That's what I was surprised by, I guess
right.
the most.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Eric probably, I mean, he obviously hadn't seen Kristen just, like, murder Beesbury out
Right.
of hand, so maybe if he had been in the room for that, might have, like, at least ensured that his brother would've, lived,
Yeah.
but just sort of trusted Kristen's honor that he wasn't gonna murder him once he had Aegon.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I mean a little bit of like, taking a gamble with your brother's life there, but I mean ultimately if he's going to be joining the cause for the other side, like you have to know there's a possibility that,
Yep.
your brother is either going to die by somebody else's or your hand in the upcoming civil war here.
Yep. And I did like the scene where they're Otto's asking for them to swear fealty now to a new king, to this new
Nope,
proclamation. And I was just thinking, okay, so these are powerful houses. You've sworn, like, don't walk in here without your guards. Like,
right?
where's your arm? Because of course you've got these people looking down at you from the Iron Throne. They have guards and like, hey,
Right.
swear
Ready to
yourself. This
kill
is the
you.
new
Yeah.
plan. Um, so of course,
And two
I
people
mean,
have the balls to be like, "Nope."
right,
And then I
right,
mean, I softened towards Caswell a little bit when I realized he's
yes,
obviously gonna try to get out to, like, warn Rhaenyra,
yep,
but I also was just like, "Ugh, dude, have the stones, man. Like,
hmm,
just stand up for it."
yep. Uh, all right. Well,
Yeah,
episode 9. That's
yeah.
House of the Dragon, episode 9.
A
All
lot
done.
happening, a lot happening.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, it's a lot of very quickly moving pieces, so it does feel realistic in the sense of, like, this is trying to, like, hush hush be done before anybody can really. I mean, all this is
Yeah.
happening, like, so much is happening. Rhaenyra doesn't even know her father died.
Yep.
Like this
Mhm.
episode really conveys at least the sense of like urgency, the sense of like hush hush, like we're getting this done without anybody's, being able to get a plan in place to stop us. That is
Yep.
really well done, the pacing.
Yep. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see where the season wraps, what we manage to
Yes.
achieve in the next episode before, like you say, we have to wait a couple years to continue on.
Yes, yes.
Um, but yeah, we hopefully you're all enjoying it. I'm certainly looking forward to this new one. I don't know what it is. Every time I like kind of fall out of it, it's like, okay, I gotta watch this. And then I watch it and I'm like, this is a great show. I don't know what's going on. So having
Yeah.
fun with it.
Yeah.
But
I do always get worried before starting an episode and then I watch it and you're right. I'm just like, "Oh man, sucking me
yeah.
in."
Yeah.